In the heart of the Wild West, where the sun blazed like a fiery coin and the wind carried secrets as old as time itself, there lived a woman whose name was whispered with both fear and reverence. They called her many things. Some said she was a witch, others claimed she was a healer, but all who knew her agreed on one thing. When she walked past, the Stallions bowed. The land stretched endlessly around her, a vast expanse of golden plains and jagged mountains that seemed to claw at the heavens. It was here, in this untamed wilderness, that her story began, a tale so unbelievable that even those who witnessed it struggled to believe their own eyes. She lived alone in a cabin nestled deep within the woods, far from the prying eyes of the townsfolk. The cabin stood weathered by years of neglect, its wooden walls gray and cracked, yet it radiated an aura that few could explain. Some swore they saw faint glimmers of light flickering through its windows late at night, while others claimed to hear soft whispers emanating from within. But no one dared approach. Little did they know what lay hidden inside those walls. Her presence was both a mystery and a marvel. She moved through the world like a ghost, silent and unseen until she chose to reveal herself. And when she did, the effect was undeniable. Men paused mid-stride, their spurs silenced by awe or unease. Women clutched their shawls tighter, glancing nervously over their shoulders as if expecting something otherworldly to follow in her wake. Even the animals seemed to sense her power. Horses reared and whinnied nervously upon her arrival, but when she passed them, they calmed, lowering their heads in what some interpreted as submission. But why? What was it about her that commanded such respect or fear from man and beast alike? That question haunted the lips of many, but none dared ask directly. Instead, rumors swirled like tumbleweeds in a storm, each more fantastical than the last. Some said she had struck deals with demons beneath the earth. Others whispered of ancient rituals performed under the light of a blood moon. A few suggested she possessed knowledge long buried by time, secrets passed down through generations of women who had been misunderstood and persecuted. And yet, for all the tales spun about her, very few truly knew her. Her origins were shrouded in mystery, much like the shadows that clung to her figure whenever she ventured out into the open. Some speculated she had come from the East, fleeing persecution or shame. Others believed she was born right here, in these unforgiving lands, raised by nature itself rather than any mortal hand. Whatever the truth may have been, one thing was certain. She was not like the rest of them, until it started on a day so hot that the air shimmered above the ground like liquid fire. Dust devils danced across the plains, swirling in chaotic patterns before dissolving back into nothingness. In the small town of Blackwater Springs, life continued as it always did. The saloon buzzed with laughter and arguments. The blacksmith hammered away at his forge, and children chased each other through the dusty streets. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. The drought had lasted longer than anyone could remember, and tempers flared easily among the weary settlers. It was then that the first strange occurrence took place. A young rancher named Thomas Carter rode into town, his horse limping and sweat pouring down his face. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by panic as he burst into the saloon, shouting for everyone's attention. "Something's wrong," he cried, his voice trembling. "My best stallion, he just collapsed. No fever, no wound, nothing. Just gone." The room fell silent, save for the crackling of the fire in the hearth. Eyes turned toward the woman sitting alone in the corner, sipping slowly from a glass of water. She met their stares without flinching, her expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke, until finally, someone muttered under their breath, "Maybe she knows something. Maybe she caused it." Thomas whipped around, glaring at the speaker. "Don't be ridiculous," he snapped. But doubt lingered in his eyes, as it did in the eyes of many present. After all, hadn't they heard the stories? Hadn't they seen the way the horses reacted to her presence? But then, another voice cut through the tension. An elderly man named Silas, who had lived in Blackwater Springs longer than anyone else, rose slowly to his feet. "Now hold on," he said gruffly, leaning heavily on his cane. "If you're looking for answers, maybe you ought to go ask her yourself. She ain't gonna come knocking on your door." Silas's words hung heavy in the air, unspoken accusations lingering behind them. Slowly, reluctantly, Thomas nodded. He left the saloon shortly after, his mind racing with possibilities. Was it true? Could she really help or harm, as people claimed? He didn't know, but desperation drove him forward. The journey to her cabin was arduous, the heat pressing down on him like a physical weight. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, sweat soaked through his shirt and his throat burned with thirst. Still, he pressed on, following the narrow trail that twisted deeper into the trees. Shadows loomed around him, dark and foreboding, but he refused to turn back. When he finally arrived, the sight of her cabin brought a mix of relief and unease. It looked exactly as the rumors described, weathered, mysterious, almost alive in its stillness. As he dismounted his horse, the animal shifted nervously beside him, ears twitching. Thomas patted its neck reassuringly, though his own hands trembled slightly. He knocked twice, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the quiet clearing. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the door creaked open, revealing her standing in the threshold. Her appearance was striking. Wild hair the color of midnight cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face marked by sharp cheekbones and piercing green eyes that seemed to see straight through him. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice low and melodic, carrying an authority that brooked no argument. I need your help," Thomas stammered, suddenly aware of how foolish he must look. "My stallion, he's sick. Or dying. I don't know. I've tried everything, but nothing works." Her gaze narrowed, studying him intently. "And why should I care about your problems?" "Because—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because people say you can do things no one else can." A flicker of amusement crossed her features, quickly masked. "People say many things," she replied coolly. "Most of them lies." "But what if it's true?" he pressed, desperation creeping into his tone. "Please, if you can help, I'll pay you anything. Anything." She regarded him silently for a long moment, the wind rustling the leaves around them. Finally, she stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. "Come in, then," she said simply. "Let us see what we can do." Inside, the cabin was dimly lit, filled with the scent of herbs and wood smoke. Shelves lined the walls, stacked high with jars and bottles containing liquids of varying colors. Strange symbols adorned the walls, carved into the wood with precision that spoke of years of practice. In the center of the room stood a table cluttered with books and papers, their pages yellowed with age. Thomas followed her awkwardly, his boots scuffing against the worn floorboards. "What happens now?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Now," she said, turning to face him, "you tell me everything, from the beginning. Leave nothing out." And so he did. He told her the drought, of the strange illnesses afflicting not only his stallion, but several other animals in the area. He spoke of the growing unrest in the town, the whispers of blame directed toward her. All the while, she listened intently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she remained silent for a long time, staring into the distance as if seeing something far beyond the walls of the cabin. Finally, she sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "This is bigger than you realize," she said quietly. "Bigger than any one person or animal." "Bigger?" Thomas repeated, confusion evident in his tone. "What do you mean?" She turned to him, her eyes burning with intensity. "There are forces at work here that you cannot comprehend, forces that have lain dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to awaken." Before he could respond, she moved swiftly to the shelves, selecting several jars and placing their contents into a small leather pouch. "We must act quickly," she continued, her movements precise and deliberate. "If we fail, the consequences will be dire, not just for you or for Blackwater Springs, but for everyone in this region." Thomas stared at her, stunned. "You're saying this isn't natural? That whatever's happening, it's deliberate?" She paused, her hand hovering over another jar. "Let's just say there are those who would use fear and suffering to further their own ends, and they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals." "But who?" he demanded, frustration mounting. "Who would do such a thing?" She hesitated, her jaw tightening. "That is a question best answered later. For now, We focus on stopping what has already begun. With that, she grabbed her cloak and headed for the door, motioning for him to follow. Together, they mounted their horses and set off toward the outskirts of town, where the afflicted animals had been gathered. Along the way, she explained her plan in fragments, pieces of a puzzle that slowly began to take shape in Thomas's mind. Upon reaching the site, they found chaos reigning supreme. Animals lay scattered across the ground, some dead, others writhing in agony. The smell of decay hung thick in the air, mingling with the cries of mourners and the frantic shouts of those attempting to contain the spread of whatever plagued them. Without hesitation, she dismounted and approached the nearest victim, a cow whose once lustrous coat now hung limp and dull. Kneeling beside it, she opened her pouch and withdrew a vial of glowing liquid. Carefully, she administered to the animal, murmuring softly under her breath. Almost immediately, the cow's breathing steadied, its body relaxing as the sickness seemed to drain away. Word spread quickly among the gathered townsfolk, drawing gasps and murmurs of astonishment. Some watched in awe, others with suspicion etched onto their faces. Yet despite their differing reactions, none could deny the evidence before their eyes. As the hours passed, she worked tirelessly, moving from one creature to the next, administering her remedies with unwavering determination. By sunset, most of the animals had shown signs of recovery, though a few remained beyond saving. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her features, but her resolve never wavered. When the last of the treatments was complete, she turned to the crowd, her voice carrying authority despite her fatigue. "This is not over," she warned. "What you have witnessed today is merely the beginning. There are darker days ahead, unless we confront the source of this evil head-on." Murmurs rippled through the group, questions rising like smoke from a fire. But she held up a hand, silencing them. "Tomorrow," she promised. "Tomorrow, I will tell you everything. Until then, prepare yourselves. This fight will require every ounce of courage you possess." That night, she returned to her cabin, leaving the townsfolk to their restless thoughts. Inside, she lit a candle, its flame casting dancing shadows across the walls. Seating herself at the table, she pulled out a map, tracing her fingers along its lines with practiced familiarity. Her expression was grim, her mind consumed by memories long buried but now resurfacing with alarming clarity. Little did they know, the answers to their questions lay buried in her past, a past she had fought desperately to forget. But now, with the veil lifted and the truth threatening to spill forth, she understood that running was no longer an option. The battle ahead would test not only her strength, but also the limits of her humanity. For in the end, they would learn that she was neither witch nor miracle worker. She was simply a woman, driven by love and loss, seeking redemption in a world that often refused to grant it. And when the final reckoning came, they would see the truth, and perhaps, for the first time, understand why the stallions bowed when she walked past. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the dense canopy of trees surrounding her cabin, she prepared for the day ahead with a heavy heart. The morning air carried a chill that hinted at the approaching autumn, and the forest seemed quieter than usual, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. She donned her cloak, the familiar weight of it settling on her shoulders like an old friend. The material, though worn, bore faint traces of embroidery, a delicate pattern of stars and crescent moons that shimmered faintly under certain light. Few noticed it. Fewer still understood its significance. But to her, it was a reminder of who she once was and the burden she had chosen to carry. The journey back to Blackwater Springs was shorter this time, her horse moving with purpose, as if sensing the urgency in her demeanor. Along the way, she passed by landmarks that held memories both bitter and sweet. A gnarled oak tree where she had once played as a child. A stream whose waters had been clear enough to reflect the sky above, now murky from neglect or worse. Each sight tugged at her resolve, reminding her of why she could not falter now. By mid-morning, she arrived at the town square, where a growing crowd had already gathered. Faces turned toward her as she dismounted, their expressions ranging from hope to suspicion. She met their gazes unflinchingly, stepping forward with a grace that belied the turmoil within. "I promise you answers," she began, her voice carrying clearly despite the absence of amplification. "And so I shall give them to you. But be warned, what I am about to reveal may challenge everything you believe. A hush fell over the assembly, even the children ceasing their chatter to listen intently. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before continuing. Many years ago, she said, her tone softening slightly, there existed a people who lived in harmony with the land. They were keepers of knowledge, guardians of secrets that predated even the arrival of settlers to these shores. Among them were those gifted with abilities beyond comprehension, abilities that allowed them to communicate with nature, to heal the sick, and protect their kin from harm. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some nodding in recognition, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Ignoring them, she pressed on. But such power drew envy and fear. Those who did not understand sought to destroy what they could not control. Wars were waged, villages razed, and countless lives lost. In the end, only a handful remained, those who fled into hiding, vowing never to let their legacy die. Her gaze swept across the faces before her, lingering on Thomas, who stood near the front, his expression tense yet attentive. I am one of those descendants, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. And what you have witnessed is not magic nor witchcraft. It is a culmination of centuries of learning, passed down through generations of women like me. Silence reigned for several long moments as the crowd digested her revelation. Then a voice broke through the stillness. A man in the back row, his face flushed with anger. So, you admit it. You're using unnatural powers to meddle with our lives. No, she countered sharply, her patience snapping. What I do is natural, born of respect for the earth and its creatures. It is you, with your greed and ignorance, who threaten to unravel the balance we strive to maintain. Her words struck a nerve, sparking a flurry of arguments among the townsfolk. Some defended her claims, pointing out the undeniable evidence of her abilities, while others accused her of deception, their fears fueling their accusations. Through it all, she maintained her composure, refusing to be swayed by their emotions. But then a new voice emerged, one that silenced the room instantly. A figure stepped forward, cloaked in shadows until they reached the center of the square. As they revealed themselves, gasps echoed throughout the crowd. It was a woman, older but no less imposing, her presence commanding attention without effort. Her eyes locked onto the speaker, piercing and knowing. Ah, she said, her tone dripping with mockery. So the prodigal daughter returned at last. Recognition dawned on several faces, including Thomas's, who whispered, That's Eleanor Grayson. She owns half the land around here." Ignoring him, the newcomer turned her focus back to the woman standing before her. "You always were too stubborn for your own good, weren't you, Clara? Running away like that, abandoning your responsibilities. Did you really think you could escape forever?" Clara's jaw tightened, her knuckles whitening as she clenched her fists. "Eleanor," she acknowledged coldly, "what brings you here?" "Oh, don't play innocent," Eleanor sneered, taking a step closer. "You know exactly why I'm here. The drought, the sickness, they're all part of my little experiment. And when you know it, you've gone and ruined everything." Gasps erupted anew, disbelief written plainly on every face. Clara, however, remained eerily calm, her green eyes narrowing dangerously. "Experiment," she repeated softly. "You mean manipulation, exploitation, destruction." Eleanor shrugged nonchalantly. "Semantics. The point is, I wanted to see just how far you go to save these simpletons. To prove that your kind is nothing but a relic of the past, incapable of adapting to modern times." Rage flared within Clara, but she forced herself to stay grounded. "If that was your goal," she retorted, her voice laced with venom, "then congratulations, you've succeeded. Because right now, I couldn't care less about proving myself to you. All I care about is stopping you before you hurt anyone else." Eleanor laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Oh, darling, you underestimate me again. This isn't just about harming a few animals or scaring some farmers. No, this is about reshaping the very fabric of this land and everyone on it." Before Clara could respond, the ground beneath them trembled violently, causing the crowd to cry out in alarm. Dust billowed into the air as cracks spread outward from the epicenter, revealing something buried deep within the earth. It was a structure, an ancient stone altar, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly with an eerie glow. From its center rose a dark mist, coiling upward like a living thing, seeking freedom from its confines. "What have you done?" Clara demanded, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain composed. "This," Eleanor gestured grandly toward the emerging monstrosity. "This is merely the beginning." The ancients knew the value of sacrifice, of offering up pieces of oneself to gain greater power. And now, thanks to your interference, the entity bound here will awaken fully and consume everything in its path. Chaos erupted as the townsfolk scrambled to flee, their panic feeding into the growing storm of energy emanating from the altar. Clara, however, stood her ground, her mind racing for solutions. There had to be a way to stop this, to undo the damage Eleanor had wrought. But time was running out. The mist thickened, forming shapes that defied logic, twisting and writhing like nightmares given form. Clara felt the pull of its influence, a siren call promising strength beyond measure. If only she would submit. Refusing to succumb, she instead focused inward, drawing upon the reserves of knowledge and strength instilled in her by her ancestors. With a shout, she unleashed a wave of energy, temporarily dispersing the encroaching darkness. The respite was brief, but it gave her enough time to act. Grabbing a nearby tool, a knife carved with intricate designs, she approached the altar, ignoring Eleanor's taunts behind her. Placing the blade against her palm, she cut deeply, letting her blood spill onto the runes below. Instantly, the symbols flared brighter, reacting to the life force offered willingly rather than forcibly. "No!" Eleanor screamed, lunging forward in a desperate attempt to stop her. But Clara held firm, her voice ringing out with conviction. "I may not be perfect," she declared, her words carrying far beyond the immediate vicinity. "I may have made mistakes, may have run when I should have fought, but I will not stand idly by while innocents suffer because of someone else's arrogance." The ground shook violently once more as the entity within the altar strained against its bonds. Clara's body convulsed under the strain, her connection to the ritual taxing her limits. Yet she endured, channeling every ounce of determination into sealing the breach. Finally, with a deafening roar, the entity dissipated, drawn back into the depths from which it came. The runes dimmed, their glow fading until they were mere carvings once more. Exhaustion claimed Clara, and she collapsed to her knees, her vision blurring as darkness crept in around the edges. When she awoke, she found herself surrounded by concerned faces, many of whom had previously doubted her intentions. Among them was Thomas, his expression filled with gratitude and admiration. "You saved us," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "Not entirely true," she replied weakly, attempting a smile. "I just delayed the inevitable." Eleanor, subdued but defiant, watched from afar, her plans thwarted but not destroyed. Clara knew there would be other battles to fight, other truths to uncover. But for now, as the sun set over Blackwater Springs, casting hues of gold and crimson across the horizon, she allowed herself a moment of peace. For in the end, it wasn't about being feared or revered. It was about doing what was right, even when the cost was steep. And as the Stallions bowed when she walked past, she understood that sometimes the greatest victories were those unseen by the world, but felt deeply by the soul. The days that followed were a blur of activity and emotion. The town, though shaken by the events, rallied together in ways Clara had never anticipated. People who had once whispered behind her back now approached her openly, offering thanks and support. It was an unfamiliar sensation, one she found both comforting and unsettling. Thomas, in particular, became a steadfast presence in her life. He visited her cabin frequently, bringing supplies and news from the town. Their conversations often drifted into topics beyond the immediate aftermath of Eleanor's scheme, delving into deeper questions about the nature of power, responsibility, and the delicate balance between progress and tradition. Eleanor herself remained at large, having slipped away during the chaos of the ritual. Though many called for her pursuit and capture, Clara urged caution. "She's dangerous," she warned, her voice tinged with unease. "If we chase her blindly, we risk falling into another trap." Her words carried weight, even among those who disagreed with her approach. For now, they chose to focus on rebuilding, both physically and emotionally. The drought, though lessened, still lingered, forcing the community to adapt to new realities. Clara shared what knowledge she could, teaching techniques passed down through her lineage to help the land heal more quickly. Yet beneath the surface of this newfound unity lay tensions that simmered like coals in a dying fire. Not everyone accepted her explanation, or her methods, without reservation. Some viewed her actions as proof of her supernatural abilities, while others dismissed them as mere coincidence or trickery. Whispers persisted, their volume fluctuating depending on the latest rumor, to spread through the town. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Clara sat alone on the porch of her cabin, staring out at the forest. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Her thoughts drifted to the past, to the people and places she had left behind in search of solitude. Had she truly believed she could escape the burdens of her heritage, or had she simply been too afraid to confront them head-on? A soft creak drew her attention, and she turned to see Thomas ascending the steps, a bundle of herbs clutched in his hands. "Thought you might need these," he said, holding them out. "They're supposed to aid with healing." "Thank you," she replied, accepting the gift with a small smile. "Though I suspect you brought them as much for yourself as for me." He chuckled, settling onto the bench beside her. "Maybe. Truth is, I haven't stopped thinking about what happened, about everything you've done and sacrificed for us." Clara gazed ahead, her expression thoughtful. "It wasn't sacrifice so much as necessity. If I hadn't acted, the consequences would have been far worse." "But why?" he pressed gently. "Why take such risks when you could have walked away? When most people wouldn't have batted an eye at our troubles?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Because there comes a point where staying silent becomes complicity, where doing nothing means endorsing the harm being done. And I couldn't live with that, not anymore." Thomas nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You know," he said after a moment, "I used to think the Wild West was all about rugged individualism, about every man fending for himself, carving out a piece of the world however he could. But seeing what you've done, it makes me wonder if maybe we've been looking at things the wrong way all along." Clara tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, his voice growing more animated, "maybe it's not about surviving alone. Maybe it's about finding ways to survive together, to use our strengths, not just as individuals, but as a community, to overcome challenges that no single person could face alone." Her lips curved into a genuine smile, rare and beautiful. "That sounds almost poetic coming from you, Thomas Carter." He grinned sheepishly. "Well, someone has to keep trying to make sense of this mess. Besides, you've given me plenty to think about lately." Their conversation lulled then, companionable silence filling the space between them. The stars began to emerge, one by one, dotting the velvet expanse above. Clara felt a sense of peace settle over her, fragile yet enduring. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, she allowed herself to believe that the future might hold something other than struggle and loss. But little did she know, the calm was temporary. Hidden forces continued to stir, their origins buried deep within the shadows of history. Eleanor, though absent for now, plotted her next move with calculated precision. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of Clara's senses, another entity stirred, a presence older and more malevolent than anything she had faced thus far. The Stallions still bowed when she walked past, their instincts attuned to the unseen currents surrounding her. But even they could not predict the trials yet to come. In the Wild West, where danger lurked around every bend and secrets lay buried beneath the soil, survival was never guaranteed. Yet Clara stood ready, her spirit unbroken, her resolve unwavering. For in the end, it wasn't about proving herself to others. It was about staying true to herself, no matter the cost. And as long as that truth remained, she knew she could face whatever lay ahead. The weeks that followed brought a fragile peace to Blackwater Springs, though the tension beneath the surface never fully dissipated. Clara continued her work, tending to the land and its people with a quiet determination that spoke of battles fought and won, but also of those yet to come. The townsfolk, for their part, began to view her not as a figure of mystery or fear, but as a guardian whose presence they had once taken for granted. Thomas became her closest ally, often accompanying her on trips into the wilderness to gather herbs or investigate strange occurrences in the surrounding areas. Their bond deepened over time, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. He admired her strength and wisdom, while she appreciated his pragmatism and unwavering support. Together, they formed a partnership that transcended mere friendship, though neither dared to name what lay between them. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Clara noticed something unusual in the distance. A faint shimmer in the air, like heat rising from the ground, seemed to emanate from the edge of the forest. Intrigued, she alerted Thomas, who immediately saddled his horse and joined her in pursuit of the phenomenon. As they approached, the shimmer resolved itself into a clearing unlike any other they had seen before. The air here was charged with energy, palpable and electric. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, its bark blackened by age and its branches twisting upward as if reaching for the heavens. Around its base lay scattered stones, each inscribed with symbols similar to those Clara had encountered during the ritual with Eleanor. "What is this place?" Thomas murmured, his voice hushed with awe. "I don't know," Clara admitted, her gaze fixed on the tree, "but it feels familiar, as if I've been here before in another life or dream." Her hand instinctively moved to the pendant hanging around her neck, a small, intricately carved piece of wood shaped like a star. It had been a gift from her mother, one of the few possessions she carried with her through the years. Now, as she touched it, a memory surfaced, vague but persistent, of standing beneath a similar tree, surrounded by faces she could no longer recall. "Clara?" Thomas's voice broke through her reverie. "Are you all right?" She nodded, shaking off the sensation. "Yes, let's explore further." Carefully, they ventured closer to the tree, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves covering the ground. As they neared, the symbols on the stones began to glow faintly, reacting to their presence. Clara felt a pull, subtle but insistent, drawing her toward the trunk of the tree. Placing her hand against its rough surface, she closed her eyes, allowing herself to connect with whatever energy resided within. Visions flooded her mind. Scenes of a world long past, where her ancestors walked the earth, wielding powers both wondrous and terrifying. She saw herself among them, younger and unburdened by the weight of centuries. They danced under the light of a full moon, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves and the song of unseen creatures. Then, abruptly, the vision shifted, showing a great conflict, a battle between those who sought harmony and those who craved dominion. When she opened her eyes, tears streamed down her cheeks, though she couldn't say why. Thomas stood nearby, watching her with concern. "What did you see?" he asked softly. "I saw—" She paused, struggling to find the right words. "I saw who we were and who we might become. This tree, it's more than just a relic. It's a doorway, connecting us to the knowledge of our forebears." Before either could respond, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. The tree's branches creaked and groaned, releasing bursts of light that illuminated the clearing in dazzling hues. From the shadows emerged figures, men and women dressed in attire reminiscent of another era, their expressions solemn yet hopeful. "You have returned," one of them said, stepping forward. His voice carried the resonance of many voices speaking as one. "The cycle begins anew." Clara stared at him, her heart pounding. "Who are you, and how do you know me?" "We are the keepers," he replied, bowing slightly. "And you, child, are the chosen one, the bridge between worlds." Her breath hitched, disbelief warring with the growing certainty within her. "Chosen for what?" "To restore the balance," he answered simply. "To ensure that the forces unleashed by your kin and others are contained before they consume all." Behind him, the other figures nodded in agreement, their gazes filled with both admiration and sorrow. Clara felt the weight of their expectations settle upon her shoulders, crushing and liberating all at once. "But I can't," she began, only to be interrupted by Thomas. You can, he insisted, gripping her arm firmly. You've already proven that countless times. Whatever this is, we'll face it together. His words gave her strength, though the path ahead remained uncertain. Turning back to the keepers, she squared her shoulders, meeting their eyes with newfound resolve. Tell me what I must do. Thus began the next chapter of Clara's journey, one that would test her limits, challenge her beliefs, and reveal truths about herself and her people that had been hidden for generations. The stallion still bowed when she walked past, a testament to the power that flowed through her veins. But now, she understood that power came not from dominance, but from unity, with nature, with others, and most importantly, with oneself. In the Wild West, where legends were born and heroes forged, Clara's story was far from over, and as the stars wheeled above, casting their light upon the land below, she prepared to embrace her destiny, whatever form it might take. For in the end, it wasn't about escaping the past. It was about learning from it and using its lessons to shape a better future.